Can I just quickly ask you on the Navalny question, do you think that there's anything that our government isn't already doing that it could do to respond to what has happened?
Look, I think, again, it shows you the troubling situation we have in Russia. It's another example of Vladimir Putin's aggression and something that we have no room for complacency over. And I think we have to show a unified approach across the UK, but indeed across all our allies in order to respond to that continued aggression from Vladimir Putin.
OK, let's come to Scotland itself. The Daily Record yesterday told its readers that you plan to, quoting you apparently, stand up to Starmer. Were you pleased by that or embarrassed?
Look, I was asked a direct question by their journalist that if we do get in the good fortune of having a UK Labour government and Keir Starmer is our Prime Minister, a man that I am proud to be campaigning for to be our next Prime Minister, someone that I believe will be a fantastic Prime Minister for every part of our country. The question I was asked was, if I believed that there was a policy area coming that would have a detrimental impact to Scotland, would I say that to him and would I argue Scotland's corner? And absolutely, of course I would. The relationship I have with Keir is, of course, a personal one. We have a genuine friendship, a genuine bond. We have a shared political project, but we also have our own mandates and we have that respect for each other's mandate. He respects the role I have to do here in Scotland and I respect the role he has to do right across the UK. That means at times we may disagree, but we will never disagree in a way that's about splits in the Labour Party. It will always be around how we can cooperate to find the right solutions, yes, for Scotland, but for every part of the UK. And that's a grown-up, sensible approach to devolution, one that we don't see from the current SNP government and the Conservative government, but one that we want to build between the Scottish Labour Party and, I hope, a UK Labour government. Cooperation to maximise delivery for Scotland rather than conflict.
Let's see if we can get behind the generalities. We haven't spoken before in this programme, but I am told that you are unusually direct for a politician. So let me ask you a direct question. What do you imagine you might disagree with Keir Starmer about? One example.
We've already taken we've taken differential view. I've been supporting workers on the front line on picket lines. I've been very clear I want us to move as fast as possible to remove the two-child benefit cap. I've already spoken previously around the need to see an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East, a position I actually don't think there is much difference now between both the Scottish Labour position and the UK Labour position. But what about all those areas we do agree? We argued and won the case, for example, for GB Energy to be headquartered right here in Scotland. We've argued and won the case for an anti-poverty strategy to be at the heart of the next UK Labour manifesto. We've argued lots of cases about positive results for Scotland, the New Deal for working people being another example. There are huge areas where there is alignment and agreement that will transform the lives of people here in Scotland.
Well, that's very interesting. Just to take your first example, do you think that the Labour leadership has been, if you like, incorrect in its attitude to trade unions and has not been close enough to trade unions?
Well, look, I think the answer to that question lies in Angela Rayner's New Deal for working people, a centrepiece of the next UK Labour manifesto, a centrepiece of our election campaign, a package that has been designed in partnership with our trade union movement and one that will transform workers' rights, the biggest transformation in a generation that means the ending of the scandal of fire and rehire, the end of exploitative zero-hour contracts and finally giving a real living wage. I think outcomes is what our trade union colleagues would want and workers across the country will want.
That's policy, but I was interested in your action. We can expect to see you on picket lines whether or not the leader likes it.
Well, I've been on numerous picket lines. I've encouraged my colleagues on the front bench to join those picket lines. I think it's right that we're on the front line talking to workers, understanding their concerns and then taking those concerns, of course, to their employers, but also bringing those concerns to Parliament. I think there is a perfectly reasonable approach to be a pro-worker, pro-business, pro-growth party. That's what we are here in Scotland, and that's what we have with Keir across the UK.
OK, let's talk about one issue where there has been a clear difference. Mr. Sir Keir says he won't call for an immediate ceasefire in Israel and Gaza, but you have done so, and in fact your conference has called for that this weekend. That means that you want the Israelis, unilaterally, I guess, to stop their action. You're going to maintain that different stance, are you?
No, let's be really clear. I'll come to the positions in a second, but let me be really clear. A ceasefire is not a unilateral ceasefire. That's not a ceasefire at all. A ceasefire means the end of violence and rocket fire in Gaza, but it also absolutely has to mean an end to rocket fire coming out of Gaza. That's what a ceasefire is. But that's only one part.
Why do you think your leader won't call for an immediate ceasefire? If it's no different, why won't Sir Keir Starmer say, I want a ceasefire?
So, Trevor, I'm going to come to that UK-Scottish Labour position in a moment, but just to clarify what you suggested our motion is about, it is not a unilateral ceasefire. We are talking about an end to violence both ways. It also includes the immediate release of hostages. I don't think we can emphasise that enough, alongside around humanitarian aid needing to get in and that pathway to a two-state solution. In terms of where the position relates to the UK Labour Party and the Scottish Labour Party, I actually don't think there is much difference. Here yesterday at the Munich Security Conference was talking about the need for a ceasefire. He has said he wants the fighting to stop right now. He has said he wants the immediate access to humanitarian aid. He has said he wants the immediate release of hostages. And he has said he wants to see that pathway to a two-state solution. We have absolute agreement on that. And look, we have this vote coming up this week. And I actually think there's an opportunity for us on Wednesday not to make it a debate about two opposition parties, but actually turn it to how do we get our parliament to get into a position where we can find agreement as a majority. Remember, the Conservatives still have a majority in that parliament. How do we get a majority in the parliament that sends a unified message to Israel and in Palestine that we need the violence to stop right now? That should be our ambition, rather than making this a debate about two opposition parties. OK, Mr.
Sarwar, the Labour Party started this week with a controversy over its candidate in Rochdale. The issue was what Mr. Azhar Ali said, that the October the 7th atrocities were deliberately permitted to happen by the Israeli government and that Jews controlled the media and so on. I want to ask you this. Had you been sitting in that room and you had heard him say that, what would you have done?
Look, it's absolutely unjustifiable and unforgivable to make those comments. I have been absolutely clear from day one that what happened on the 7th of October was an act of immense horror and terror, the largest loss of life, largest loss of Jewish life in any single day since the Holocaust. And I don't think anything can be said to minimise such a horrific incident, and we must never allow that situation to ever happen again.
I completely understand that's your view, but I asked you a rather different question. I asked you a different question. I asked you, what would you have done if you had been sitting in that room? Because it's striking, when you listen to the recording, that nobody challenged him. So let me ask you, if you had been sitting in that room, what would you have done?
Well, I haven't heard the recording. I wasn't in the room, but had I been in the room, I would do what I've done in every room that I've been in when speaking about the situation. And look, I understand there was lots of concern around what was happening around a ceasefire vote previously in the Parliament. I was asked by my UK Labour colleagues to speak to representatives who were concerned about what was happening in the Middle East and not believing Labour was taking a strong enough line. I went and had many of those conversations, both on the phone and directly with many colleagues across the UK Labour Party.
You would have challenged him directly.
And the point I made to each and every single one of them was, as frustrated and angry you might be justifiably about what's happening in Palestine, we cannot minimise the horror that happened on October the 7th, and we can never, ever allow any hint of anti-Semitism either in our party or in our wider society.